All right, that's enough silly faces for this morning. If you looked up this particular video in my feed, then it would have started off with a stupid face. So that's why I'm pulling a stupid face. It's just a thing that I do. Welcome to the SitRep. Welcome. It is the 11th of May, 2022. I'm going to go through some stories that I found overnight that I found interesting, and then discuss how I think we could best prepare for some of the after effects of these things, or what these things are sort of building to, what they're looking at in the greater picture of the world at the moment, because I feel like it's very easy for us to get bogged down in the minutiae of news and events that are happening at the moment without actually sort of thinking about the longer term effects, or putting all these things together and getting a bit of perspective on them to figure out what's actually happening in the world. So my name is Stuart, this is Ragnarok Survival, and let's get into it for today. First off, I posted this story on in my stories on Instagram. So if you're following on YouTube, then you probably won't have seen it. But if you are on Instagram, then congratulations, you may have seen it. India reaps export boom as Europe and US search for fuel to replace Russia. So this story is basically saying that India's making a absolute killing out of selling fuel at the moment. And when I read this, I was just like, what's going on? This is insane. India is not the only country to be doing this, by the way. I think this news is coming out because the US in particular is trying to put pressure on India to stop doing what they're doing, which is basically taking the sanctions and things like that the US have put on and making them redundant, essentially. Just move my cameras around, making them redundant, as well as a lot of other countries. But India is seen as one of our guys. It's, they're part of our block of countries, being that they're also part of the Quad. So Australia, India, Japan, and Australia formed the Quad, which was about curtailing Chinese power in the area. So, but India's doing its own thing, as India will do. It's shipping out gasoline and diesel at near record volumes in March, despite being the world's third largest consumer of these products. So they consume a whole heap. They're the third largest consumer of all these products in the world, and they're still shipping it out, which is like, well, that's pretty amazing. What are they, not letting their own people use it? No, they're letting their own people use it. It's quite clear what's going on here. They're buying it cheap off Russia and then selling it expensively to Europe and to the US, whose fuel prices are through the roof at the moment. So, this is basic economics, supply, demand, finding a cheap product, selling it off for, a profit, and India's doing it excellently. So congratulations to them. They're probably making a lot of money off this. And US is starting to get up in arms about it, but US, the thing is, people are going to look at that and go like, wow, Putin bad. This is the core problem of this is all Putin. Well, it's not exactly. The actual issue here is the US tying itself in knots and tying its own hands behind its back in a fight. Not even just one hand behind the back. They've tied both hands behind their back and they're leading with their face into the fight and then wondering why they're getting hit in the face so much. And they've also done it to Europe as well. And so Europe's getting beaten bloody right now. And I think it's only a matter of time before Europe starts going like, hey, you know what? No, I'm not about this. Like, this is crap. We need to do something else right now. What that something else is, I don't know. Could it be easing of sanctions? Maybe. Couldn't it be them actually getting more aggressive and going in to the Ukraine and trying to actually stop the root cause of the problem? Maybe. But that one was interesting and amusing, and it's a good thing to sort of look at these countries doing this, because it's just going to exacerbate any problems that we're currently feeling. All right. I came out yesterday and said that the US had changed their languaging about Taiwan, and I was waiting for that China rebuttal to that, and it has come out. So China rebukes US for changing Taiwan wording on State Department website. This is coming out of Reuters. They've come out and said strong words. Very, very strong words. They're not happy. They're not happy that that the US has dropped this one China wording in their foreign policy, and they've picked up Taiwan wording in there and Taiwan independent state. There are no official ties there. There's no official ties, but the US does pump a lot of foreign aid and military aid into Taiwan. So there's not foreign, and like I always say, don't look at what people say or countries say. Look at what they do. And so if we're looking at what they do, it's pretty obvious that US is very allied with Taiwan for various reasons, and that China is building up for war against Taiwan to take Taiwan. But and the follow-on effects from that. China, though, clearly does not want to do that. I don't think that's option one. I don't think that's plan A. That might be plan B or even C in their minds. China would just like to, as it has been doing in the world, just kind of very slowly, softly enveloping things and taking things over. And I'll talk a little bit more about that process on a later story. A little bit of cyber stuff now. Actually, no, I'll talk about this China stuff. I'll stay in this lane here. So, national security brief came out from the US. They're looking at medical technologies and pharmaceuticals in the US. Now, they've picked up that there's a bit of a threat there. And I'm thinking you can probably see, if you've got half a brain or at least 3 brain cells in your head and you've got eyeballs, then you can probably see this and this happening. And I'll point it out to you now. The US is the most medicated per capita population on Earth. And I think Australians, we are not too far behind. I have a feeling, I know at least in something like antidepressants, so the medication for antidepressants, I know Australia is 3rd. So I think it goes US, Iceland, and Australia. So, heavily medicated populations. And that's generally populations who have a pretty good medical system that isn't reliant on alternative medical solutions or, even sort of common sense ones like talk therapy or making sure that people are exercising and stuff like that. It's like, oh no, we've got the money. We're a developed country. We want to support our people, so let's throw drugs at them. So that's where we are as Australians, and that's definitely where Americans are. The next thing you need to think about, like I teach with everything, is what's the supply chain? Where do these things come from? And how reliant or beholden are you to that? So where does our food come from? I talk about that ad nauseum. Where does your water come from? Can you secure that? Blah, blah, blah. Where do these drugs come from? Well, maybe they're produced by a company here in Australia or in the US or something like that. Okay, well, where do the constituent products for that drug come from? Overwhelmingly, there should be no shock to anyone, it is China. China and India, actually, but China has a huge proportion of these products, which are called APIs, which is active pharmaceutical ingredients. So the active pharmaceutical ingredients, or the APIs, they're made in China, and then those things are shipped out. Sometimes they're just created into the drug that you need in China and sent out. Increasingly so, that happens. Or they're just sent out as APIs into the country, and then compounding chemists or whoever put it together into the drugs and give it to us. So this is a massive reliance, and I really recommend. There's a book that I've recommended to people before, which actually shows what would happen if the power was turned off for a sustained amount of time, and it's called 1 Second After. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but 1 Second After. Check that book out. One of the after effects of power being shut off is that there is a massive amount of medicated people. So for starters, people who are reliant on medications that require refrigeration, they're going to hurt. They're going to be dead within 3 weeks. But then there's all the other effects. So within 3 months, you have a huge population of antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines, antipsychotic medicines. All those people are going to splinter within 3 months if they can't get access to those sorts of things. And the biochemistry, they're obviously reliant on these sort of drugs. So I can go down a rabbit hole with this, but what I'm trying to point out here is that this is a huge, huge thing. If we can't get these constituent drug ingredients from China into our countries, that's going to be a problem. So if there was some sort of conflict that would happen with China, and this is some of the power that China actually exerts. This is, I was talking about China doing things the slow, methodical, soft way. This is soft power. So China has built itself up to be so fundamental in so many different industries that countries look at it and go like, oh, can we actually sanction them? Now, look at what the Russian sanctions are doing right now. That's why I led off with that story about the Russian sanctions and how India is profiting from them, and how the Bowser price, the cost of living in US and Europe is horrific at the moment, and it's only going to get worse because they put these sanctions on. How reliant were they on Russia? A bit. How reliant is the world on China? A lot. So if these sanctions get thrown on China, imagine these sorts of effects that could come out. We're really, really reliant on China. So this is sort of stuff we need to think about as preppers. Start to go like, wow, okay, yeah, am I reliant on this? Am I reliant on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicine, antipsychotic medicine, any sort of medicines where the products coming out of China, which is the vast majority of them? Okay, what do I do? What do we do about that? Can we seek alternatives? Can we start to look at herbal remedies? What are these products actually based on? Because generally they're based on something that's in nature already. Can I look at other types of treatment, talk therapies, blah, 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 whatever it might be. Or can I start to stockpile this stuff? Can I predict this sort of thing and try and stockpile more than a couple of weeks? Can I get to a couple of months? Can I get to 6 months? Can I get to 12 months stockpile? Or does this stuff have an expiration date on it? These are the sorts of things that I think we should really start to think about. So as a number, they've actually thrown it out there, and I've got it in here. It's in this story. China currently has the ability to kill at least 131 million Americans in less than 3 months by simply stopping those drugs going out. If they go, okay, yep, bang, you're going to throw sanctions on us, or you're going to embargo something, bang, we're not going to send you these drugs now. US doesn't have the ability to pick this up within that 3 month period, and so after 3 months, they would see an estimated 131 million Americans possibly die. So that's a lot of soft power to be wielding around. That's borderline hard power. So they don't need to fire rockets. They don't need to fire missiles. They don't need to send tanks in or do anything like that. They can actually just stop what they're doing now. Pretty terrifying, if you ask me. The other part of this is, and I'll go back to this India thing that I was talking about earlier this morning, was that one of the things that India is doing in order to send out their petrol products and make a profit on it is they're going, hey, look, let's just not worry about maintenance right now. Okay, maintenance is not a big thing. Maintenance is just spending money in the hope that something doesn't go wrong. We'll fix things up. This is a mentality that I hate. Like I think we should maintain things and not fix things when they're broken. It's kind of like on the small scale, a very lazy sort of thing to do, but on the large scale, it can be horrifically bad for systematic things, for system-wide things. So if they're looking at their refinery process or whatever it is and go, like, don't worry about maintenance so much right now, that costs money. We need to profit from this stuff now, just send it out. That curtailing in that mentality leads to some pretty dark places in the future. And I actually have a feeling that apart from the conspiratorial ideas about what's happening with the food system, especially within the US with the fires that are happening in food plants, one of my side theories is that it's actually just the result of poor maintenance, which is the result on policies to drive down food prices, which is the result of policies that drove up food prices in the first place. So it's a bit of a interconnected web, and it goes back a fair bit, but it goes something like this. US government made poor policies, drove up food prices, cost of living started going up. US government gets scared. They start putting pressure on food manufacturing plants. Look, we need the food price as low as you can, do what you have to, or else, or, and we'll buy you up by this, by X, Y, and Z. Food manufacturers go, well, we can't because the food costs this much to come in. Where can we save money? Maintenance of our equipment, safety mechanisms, blah, blah, blah. Yep, don't worry about that for now. Things start breaking down. Things start getting worse. Fires start breaking out, safety mechanisms aren't there, boom, places burn to the ground instead of being put out as they should have been. That's just an idea. Anyway, that's what maintenance is, and that's how important it is. Thinking about this too, and kind of tied in with this, is innovation of products, innovation of pharmaceuticals. Coming back to this story, who are the innovators of pharmaceuticals? So who creates it? China. Is China the main innovator in the pharmaceutical space? No, not even close. It's US, Japan are the two biggest innovators in pharmaceuticals. I think China is like 6%. 6% of new drugs that got launched worldwide came out of China. For somebody who's creating the vast majority of constituent products, what does that tell you? That tells you that they're not the ones who are creating stuff. They're getting the ideas from other people and they're repackaging it. They're the ones who control the manufacturing process for that. Which again, if we predict into the future, this is one of the reasons why I'm actually quite a big advocate for things like capitalism, because capitalism breeds innovation. Communism breeds the exact opposite, the antithesis of it. It looks at what's already out there and goes, okay, yes, we'll take that and we'll make it cheaper. We'll make it more cost effective to make. We'll do economies of scale, but it doesn't breed innovation. It doesn't bring newness into the world. It doesn't drive us forward as human beings. And so this is one of the massive problems I think is actually happening in the world at the moment, is that we are relying on communist countries essentially for our resources and for these sorts of things. And they are rapidly taking us over, and they're actively taking us over as well. They're actively looking at taking over the systems of the world. And when that happens, well, that's the end of innovation. That's the end of moving forward as a people. That's a little bit dramatic. Okay, all right. That's not necessarily true. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But if we follow the current trends that we are following at the moment, that's what could happen. Anyway, end rant. Let's go on with some other stories. Massive fires throughout Russia. Again, this sort of stuff's not getting reported on the mainstream media, I think, because the R word has almost become a naughty word on, unless it's about Ukraine and about how evil they are. But anything else that's happening in Russia, countries are just falling over themselves to shut it down. So huge fires, huge deadly forest fires are ripping through massive regions. So the Ural region, the Siberian region, which are huge regions throughout Russia. These fires are shooting through there. What do we got? Some numbers: 16 people dead, another 18 injured. These are like unpopulated or not densely populated areas either. So the fact that we're seeing this sort of stuff, like this sort of casualty rate is pretty should show you what the impact of these fires is. But always like to point out any sort of weather effects that are going on as well, because I find them very interesting. And if you've ever listened to me before, I think it's one of the bigger things that we should be worried about in our lives at the moment, especially as Aussies. Fire, this is something that I'm always concerned about. Fire and floods, we get battered with them just about every year. So, but I think we're going to see more frequency and more intensity of weather effects. So these sorts of fires are going to get bigger and bigger, burn more areas, and that's going to have larger effects on the world. We're all focusing on nukes at the moment. Well, it's kind of like a slow nuke going off right now. What else is happening in Russia that we're not hearing about? Let's talk about some cyber stuff. RuTube, which is the Russian equivalent of YouTube, has been offline for a couple of days now because hackers have taken it down. No news. I couldn't find any news on who the hackers were and why they did it. Ruchu, obviously being part of Russian side of things, a lot of Russian things are being attacked by cyber people at the moment, kind of under the guise of like, yeah, we're doing the right thing because we're pro-Ukraine and everything Russian's bad. I always like to point out that not everything Russian is bad. There are some, like the government's obviously not doing good things and is attacking a sovereign country, which is never good. But that doesn't mean that Russians, the Russian people themselves, are necessarily bad, or individuals. Maybe, as I always say, we should try and bring a little bit of nuance into these sorts of arguments, and think about an individual Russian person is not necessarily evil. An individual Russian company is not necessarily evil, and they also have to have a delicate balancing act between their own government shutting them down as well. So, but anyway, Russian cyber attacks. I like to throw up cyber attack sort of stuff and information when I see it, just as a reminder to us that the interwebs that we all rely on and utilize is more fragile than a lot of people would believe. So always protect yourself when you're out in these things. Free speech sort of stuff. Here we go. EU Commission is expected to publish a draft law on chat control, which is using AI to check all messages, content, and images directly on users' devices in order to bypass encryption protocols. So essentially what they're saying is they're going to use AI on your device, this in the EU, AI on your device that's going to go through every message, every image that you want to send to someone and deem if it's all right. This is obviously like some pretty overt surveillance. This is some pretty overt curtailing of any sort of free speech that people have. And again, if you've ever listened to me before, I'm a big proponent of free speech and believe that people should be able to say whatever they want to say. But we as adult, critical thinking human beings should also be taught to take on information and understand where it comes from and look at it critically. I think you're actually curtailing that ability of people when you're trying to stop the information at the source. So this I cannot see as a good thing in any way, shape, or form. And if you're supporting of that, then please try and explain to me how you think that's a good idea. There's also been some rumblings about this, about them changing information, and especially in the US sort of side of things. I don't know if I got the story or not, but their new Ministry of Truth have started to talk about, hey, can we actually change people's messages to what we want it to say? So yeah, we'll look at the message and then go, oh no, we don't like this phrase, and we'll change it to this. So like this is very overtly Orwellian 1984 now. It's where we find ourselves. All right, some financial stuff. The EU is to go into debt for Ukraine. So the EU is looking at doing a 15 billion euro bond emission to finance US government operations for at least 3 months. Zelensky has come out and he said to the International Monetary Fund that they need about $7 billion per month to continue doing what they're doing, just to pay people to continue fighting the good fight for the West. The US has said, we'll back you up. We'll do 1/3 of that. Now, EU, what can you guys do? And so they're trying to get across the line the other 2/3 of this exorbitant amount for 3 months. I'm always like, well, what happens after that? Like, is Ukraine going to pay that back, or does that money just disappear? It's a good thing that money is imaginary and they can just print it. So it's all going to be okay, guys. We'll just print more. couple of countries have actually been a bit stick in the mud about this. Austria, Germany, and Greece have said, "Hey, can we look at some alternative options?" So look for those names to be, pressure start to put on those countries there. I wouldn't be surprised if some other stories come out about these countries being bad in some way, or some sort of negative press coming out about these countries, because that's sort of what's happened in the past couple of weeks, where we've seen countries go like, look, nah, we're not sure we want to do this. And then they get bullied into doing it essentially. Who else needs money in the world? Palestine. The World Bank has said that Palestine is in a precarious situation and its economy needs more aid, lest it collapse. And a collapsed Palestine economy would mean a destabilized country, more so than it already is. So they actually had a bumpy year last year, Palestine. Not a bumpy year, but they had a growth year last year, but they're still really hurting. Food insecurity is worsening. Food security is worsening, and they've got an increased number of people who are looking for work. What they can tell, at least, being that they've got more work permits coming into Israel. So from Palestine. So, and obviously there's still a war going on there. So essentially, the World Bank is saying, hey, more donations are going to be needed for Palestine. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. So collapsed economies equal higher conflict, i.e. more war. This is not trending in a good direction. Again, I like to point out to people, like, Ukraine's not the only thing that's going on in the world. There are wars happening in the Middle East right now, and they are about to get worse unless a lot more money is pumped around. And if we step back and look at the bigger picture here, it's a lot of people asking for a lot of money. A lot of countries going, hey, we need money, we need money, we need money. It's almost like people are starting to feel the effects of, I don't know, if we got afraid about some sort of disease and then locked down people and didn't allow them to work or move around or even ship goods across borders, that might have an effect on an economy, an effect that could be felt in maybe 12 to 24 months' time. Could that be happening right now? Yep, probably. You shut down an economy, you lock people in their homes and say you can't work, and then all of a sudden the economy tanks, you get more instability, you get more food insecurity, and the follow-on effect in that is more conflict in the world. So, surprise, surprise. Who could have saw that coming, though? Nobody, except anybody who's got a brain in their head. Okay, let's dive back into our area. The Philippines just had an election, and they have elected Marcos Jr., former dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. His son, Marcos Jr., has won the election over there. What does that mean? Well, US looking at this and going, US and Philippines being pretty tight for a long time. They're looking at this and going like, this might not be good. And already there's been some signaling that Marcos might be wanting to do more deals with China. Obviously, Philippines is a huge linchpin for the US in this whole South China Sea area. A lot of common ground with their militaries there. So the fact that Marcos Jr.'s come out and said, hey, basically, yeah, what US is doing, it's not really working. Look, we're going to just try and go at it alone, and I'm going to do some deals with China. We're going to make a deal with China. That's got a lot of people on edge. This could actually tip the whole South China Sea situation on its head as it is at the moment. There's kind of like, it's kind of not a standstill, but it's like, all right, the balance of power is what it is. This could be the thing that actually flips it and inverts the balance of power. And could see things changing quite rapidly in the future. This is a quote from Marcos Jr. "If you let the US come in, you make China your enemy," he said. So he clearly doesn't want to make China the enemy. He's clearly also signaling, hey, China is big and powerful and nobody wants to make China the enemy. We should respect China is essentially what he's saying. Well, that's the subtext that I'm reading. That's what I'm putting on it, at least. I think we can come to an agreement with China. As a matter of fact, people from the Chinese embassy are my friends. We have been talking about that. So this reads to me very Trump-esque type things. We're going to do a deal with China. I got this. So yeah, this is a lot of something that we need to keep our eye on, and this is quite a large shift in power that could be happening here. Definitely keep watching that space. Already talked about that. Where else are we? All right. Last thing I'll talk about is the equality of a communist system. Because you all know that I'm a big believer in communism. I think we should all move towards being communists. No, obviously that's a joke. I don't like it. I don't like the communism. Always like to try and discuss communism with people, like real living examples of communism with people who are pro-communism. Because, I guess the fundamental thing about communism is fairness, okay? It's like, hey, let's make everything equal and then we're all cool, all right? And we're going to enforce that on the people. We're going to do it from the top down. We're going to say everyone is equal and then I earn as much as the Prime Minister does, or I earn as much as Elon Musk does, and that's fair. That's damn fair. Which obviously is utter bullshit. It's not damn fair. You pay your dues. I mean, capitalism. Well, capitalism, as the quote goes, it's actually on democracy, but it was a quote from Winston Churchill that democracy is the worst of all the systems except all the others that we tried. And capitalism's kind of the same. It ain't perfect, but it's better than the rest. Anyway, this story is coming out. There's been a number of these types of stories that have come out in and around Shanghai with their lockdowns, their horrific lockdowns that have been happening recently. Now, this one is very interesting because, this is from Reuters, but it's essentially now saying like, yeah, this is actually what's happened. Like, people are admitting it, the companies are admitting it, the individuals are admitting it. Luxury brands navigate Shanghai's lockdown to keep VIPs pampered. So what was happening, the whole city got locked down. They got this whole crazy zero COVID policy in China, which is never going to work. But anyway, they've had trouble getting shipments of food into the people. They've locked people in their apartments. People are literally starving, and food can't get to the people. So the people are hurting, except if you're a VIP and you got a lot of money. So these sorts of people who are getting special treatment from companies like Louis Vuitton, Cartier, to name a couple, essentially these companies were going like, oh shit, all right, well, what can we do for our VIPs? Let's get them food. We can do that. So they were doing special shipments of all sorts of extravagant food to their VIPs who they wanted to keep okay because they're going to buy their goods afterwards. And obviously, like it's a pretty. You got supermarkets that are closed, that they won't allow them to open. Logistic chains just upended, destroyed. Residents, it's not even like the food isn't there. They just can't get out there to buy the food. It's not like they don't have the money. They just can't go out and buy food. And the government's trying to send provisions in to fill these gaps, and it's just really sporadic by all accounts. Mixed quality of the food. Some of the food's apparently getting in there and it's like off or expired, or some of it's like, not food that certain people could eat, or, they're just getting heaps of rice and none of the other stuff, or they're getting heaps of the other stuff and none of the rice. It's like, there's no evening out of the food and thinking about it. And yet you've got companies who are somehow navigating through all these lockdowns and getting food out to these VIPs. So again, like, it's just an example of class division, and any historical example of communism that we have in actual societies always shows this class division. It's one of the things that communists always like to throw back at capitalists, like, well, class division, it's these fat cats who are getting rich off the poor working man's back, and they're separate from us and they don't care about us. Yeah, that is true. That definitely is there, but it's also there in communism. So not that I'm here to beat up about communism, but this is something that I like to look at and go, well, this is really, in my mind, just government power gone awry. This is what happens when we rely on our government to look after us. And so again, I will finish off today with the same rhetoric that I always try and throw into your heads is, do not rely on the government. Do not rely on anyone else but yourself. You need to become your own farmer, your own food supply chain. You need to become your own security. You need to become your own reserve bank. You need to look after you and your family, and then your community by extension of that, because if you can do that, then you are looking after yourself. But paying taxes to look after someone who is half a country away, and in Australia, that's quite a large distance away, doesn't really make sense to me. Because at the end of the day, are they going to look after you if you're hurting? If everyone's hurting, who's going to get looked after first? It's probably not going to be you. So make sure that you can look after yourself. Put into action a plan to actually secure yourself in whatever way that you can for now. And if that looks like having an extra can of beans in your pantry, then do that. If it looks like having 12 months worth of food stored up for you, your family, and 10 other people that you don't know yet, then it looks like that. Do whatever you can, whatever small part that you can play in this, do it. If it means learning new skills to make yourself more of an asset in a disaster situation rather than a liability, then do that. So that's it for today. Keep prepping, keep thinking about this sort of stuff, but keep becoming more self-reliant human beings, people that are going to be assets, people that are going to help out others and not be the destroyers, not be the looters, not be those people who are predating on others in an emergency, rather be that who is protecting others in an emergency, be that who is looking after others and taking care of others in the emergency. That, I think, if we can get a critical balance of people who are doing that, then we might actually be all right, no matter what happens to us in the future. So keep prepping, gang. If you can, get out there, start growing food, start securing yourself, do whatever you can today to make yourself better and more prepared, and to make your world around you a better, safer place. But that's it for today. So stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a live at some stage with Lauren, or two, actually. I've got two in the pipeline. One will be about prepping for women, and the other one will be about etymology. Not really prepping at all, but it's just a thing that I love, where words come from and how we are letting it slip in our modern society. So stay tuned for them. I don't know when I'll do them, but I will do them at some stage. But apart from that, stay safe, keep prepping, and Semper Paratus.